Atheist Talk on KTNF, AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Good morning to all of you joining us locally by radio and streaming online. We appreciate you tuning in. Today is Sunday, August 19th, 2018. I'm your host, Maddie Love, in studio today with Hertzy Hertz and joined via Skype by Nikki and Brentley from the Unapologetix podcast. This is an open conversation, and we encourage listener interaction with your phone calls to 952-946-6205, your emails to radio@mnatheist.org, tweet us at Atheist Talk, or send us a message over at facebook.com/atheisttalk. Hertzy, Brentley, Nikki, thank you for taking this Sunday morning to talk to us and join us on the Minnesota public, no, not public, yeah, are we public radio airwaves? I think I just added way too many words in there.
Potentially.
Yeah, I don't know, like, that I believe it or not, I did consume a lot of caffeine, but I'm not sure if it was enough. I was up all night with a new cat, so.
Oh, you got a new kitty? I'm not talking to you.
Well, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it was, when we reached out together, like in the Facebook group that we're a part of, that closed secret atheist Facebook group that we're part of, it was like, cool, I want to listen to your show. I was like, I really like this show. That's like, it's pretty cool. So for all these people listening that haven't heard your show, your podcast is called Unapologetix. Is that right?
That's right.
So can you tell us a bit about your show?
It's basically, it started out as just a purely atheist show, but because of just, I wanted to let it develop into whatever it becomes on its own, and it ended up being something a lot better, I think, because first of all, Nikki's not an atheist, so that's less part of the show, and it's more political, but our political views align a lot,
exactly.
Because I'm an atheist, but you're a secular humanist. You're just not, and you believe heavily in separation of church and state.
Exactly. So we still end up talking about religion a lot, and especially how it relates to politics today. It's just, I think we try to have a little bit more of a nuanced conversation because we both kind of have different beliefs on whether or not religion should exist or how it can exist in a democracy, and so we have a lot of really good conversations. And we're also an interracial couple. I'm Black and Brent is very white.
I'm white.
And so we get to have a lot of conversations as well about how those kind of identities sort of play into politics today and religion, and how we have very different religious experiences, not just because he's an atheist and I'm not, but also because I'm Black and I grew up in a Black church and you grew up in a white evangelical church, which, you would think there'd be a lot of similarities in that because I also went to an evangelical church, but actually it leads to a lot of conversation about how white supremacy sort of works in that and how we had different experiences on that as well.
So, Nikki, you'd say you identify as a secular humanist, not as an atheist, but like, do you believe in, like, would you still label yourself a theist? Or, not that you have to label anyway. I'm just trying to
Yeah. So, no, not really. Like, it's one of those questions where, how sometimes you just have no opinion on something?
Yeah.
Where I don't know that I need to have an opinion on this. It's kind of more like that, where I'm not an atheist because I don't know that I want to have sort of a stake in the game. I think my stake is I want my democracy to be completely free of any sort of religious overtones, especially ones that supreme Christianity, and especially make white Christianity the most important aspect of my democracy and my country. But I think I definitely don't believe that there's a God in the sky making all of these things happen. You know what I mean?
No.
But I try to balance not believing that with allowing people to believe that and still be decent citizens that vote, not Republican.
Exactly.
So it's hard. I want sort of the nuance, I guess, in trying to understand how we can make these worlds work. Because I think more than anything, I'm an optimist, and I want to believe that we can have all of these things. Like, we can still have the community aspect of religion and the cultural aspect of religion without it bleeding over into,
making people act crazy.
Exactly. Becoming completely irrational and trying to force people into doing things that they have no business forcing them to do.
Exactly.
I think secular humanist kind of is the best label, because I don't know that I've really thought too deeply about, how religion should be in a representative democracy, I guess.
I usually just...
It's funny because I think Brent looks at it a whole lot from his experience of being so deeply in an evangelical religion. And I look at it so much more from a political standpoint, because that's where my head is at usually. Right. Because for the most part, I just don't care what people do with their time and what they believe. It's more about how does it end up affecting everyone else around you.
Yeah, exactly.
I kind of call that, because I kind of have some of that, and I usually just say I'm an atheist. I just don't care.
Yes,
cool.
That is it. I love that hurts you best, because it's like I have too many things in my brain. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I get it. I'm so I'm very anti-theist because of the way I was raised and everything. I was homeschooled and extremely indoctrinated. Wouldn't even let me meet other people. Basically. Mm-hmm. So I didn't even know a world out there existed until I was like 18.
Exactly. And my relationship with religion, even though we had a church we were members of, it was very casual. It was, a lot of stopping and starting. And we were still very much a progressive family that consistently voted progressively. So I never even grew up believing that my religious beliefs had to intersect with my political beliefs.
Well, and I think when you talk about hey, does this even matter? I feel like most people who are in the atheist activism side of it, if everybody who is religious had the same point of view, if they kept themselves out of government and they kept themselves out of making laws and things like that, I don't think there'd be an atheist activist movement. I think we'd be like, yeah, that's cool. You guys go to your church thing on Sunday, stop making laws that affect us and things like that, and whatever, we'll just live in peace and harmony.
Exactly.
Well, I do have to ask about that, because there's so many laws that are, or not even laws, but there's all these groups and such that are against, LGBT, and you have some of the supremacy, and they draw their things from religion. I think there still would be some activism, basically just trying to knock these groups back. I think it would also be joined in more by some of the other groups, because there's no longer that law stuff hanging over there, hopefully.
Right, yeah.
So I think there still would be. I think it would just be different. Yeah,
I mean, I don't think it would have the same the feeling like we're fighting against this gigantic
Goliath.
I don't know what the right word is.
Goliath.
Yeah, I was thinking galactic superpower.
It's like fairies. It's like, how do you have an argument with someone who believes in
fairies? Yeah.
It's when you're trying to show here is the data, here's what we know, and here's what centuries of humanity is telling us, but you're still saying no because basically a fairy.
Yeah, well, they're the reptilians told you that the whole time.
The reptilians didn't tell us here at Atheist Talk anything. We listened to the Raelians. The Raelians are who we look to for advice.
I'm actually listening to a podcast about that cult right now.
Yeah. I recommend the Monster Talk podcast about anything supernatural. So,
if you're interested in cults, there's a podcast just called Cults. It's really good. They're a little nicer. Yeah. They're a little nicer to normal religion than I would be, but they know their shit. They research it really well.
What Hertie's saying is, if you're interested in cults, she will more than happily direct you to some cults that you could believe in.
Yeah. And pro tip, the same folks who do the Cults podcast also does a serial killers podcast, which is equally good.
I know. And they have... go ahead.
They're just wonderful.
Oh, yeah. They have a whole bunch of podcasts that are awesome.
Yeah, my wife loves serial killer stuff, so I have a feeling that I just found one of her first podcasts that she'll actually listen to. I mean, other than mine, of course. She'd listen to mine.
Right.
My mother doesn't even listen to my podcast.
She listens to you on the radio, though.
No, not really.
Okay, well, she listened to us once on the radio because she commented on how we talked to a caller. Positively, a positive comment. We had an abortion caller, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, we miscarried that well. So That was in such bad taste, and I really don't care. So your name is Unapologetix. We kind of talked about you two having slightly different views on religion. But do you ever deal with like Christian apologetics or talk about the religious apologists on your show? I'm just wondering, like, the way it's Unapologetics is that?
Yeah. Good. Well, see, and that was the original point of the show was, I was gonna be just playing a lot of just YouTube videos of people, a lot of like what other shows do, where they play parts from sermons and then talk about it. It's even like Tom and Cecil from Cognitive Dissonance. They'll do the same thing. They all do the same thing, really. And that's kind of why I wanted to start to step away from that a little bit, because it ended up sounding very similar to everything else, And
I think, too, our show is still very new and still kind of in the infancy stage. And one of the things we definitely want to start doing is the more long form, where we do kind of, because one of the things that's really interesting is Brent was homeschooled, and I don't know any homeschool people except for Brent and his friends that were homeschooled.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things we want to do is sort of go into that and talk about, some of the instances of being homeschooled, especially in the state of Florida, where right now we're spending millions of dollars to support, charter schools, Christian charter schools that are basically teaching, apologetics in class with public funding.
Right.
So we really want to take the time to do more research on shows where we can, kind of flash up some of those.
All right, I am gonna have to cut you off because we're about to go to a break. Please stay with us through the break, and we'll return. And when we return, we will sheepishly ask Brentley about his favorite farm animals. You're listening to AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Welcome back to AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota. You're tuned into Atheist Talk. I'm your host, Maddie Love, in studio with Hertzy Hertz, and joined via Skype by Nikki and Brentley from the Unapologetix podcast. Before we get back to the show, I just wanted to let listeners know that if you're interested in meeting fellow atheists and freethinkers in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, you can join Minnesota Atheists and the Minnesota Free Thought community for their August picnic. The picnic is open to anyone who wants to join, and you really shouldn't miss this one, as this is not just your chance to meet wonderful atheists and freethinkers, but you'll have a chance to vote on the new logo for Minnesota Atheists. The picnic is a potluck, but you're welcome to come, eat, vote, and meet wonderful people, even if you don't have a dish to pass. Check the Minnesota Atheists Facebook page for more information. It is at 12 o'clock in the Columbia Heights area. I forgot which park.
Columbia Park.
Columbia Park. Maybe it's not even Columbia Heights then.
No, it is Columbia Heights.
Okay.
Well, it's by Columbia Heights because it's right by where I live.
Fantastic. Columbia Heights, Columbia Park. You will still have to Google it. I'm sorry I didn't prepare that much for it.
But it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking I might make it.
I'm totally going to make it because I need to vote.
And I didn't bring a dish, but I'm going to come anyway.
That's okay. I don't have a dish either.
Yeah. If you're interested in getting involved with the conversation, maybe you could talk about the potluck. The number is 952-946-6205. If you'd rather, you can email us at radio@mnatheist.org, tweet us at Atheist Talk, or leave a comment on the Facebook post for this episode over at facebook.com/Atheist Talk. And going into the break, Nikki, I completely cut you off as you were talking about millions and millions of dollars getting poured into charter schools and charter schools in Florida.
Yes, where they're basically teaching, basically skipping over the Holocaust, teaching the Civil War as if, Black people were just, not an issue, like slavery was not the biggest issue. So it's just really a disservice to our public schools here in the state. And so we do try to touch on those issues. And we, one of the things we do too is sometimes we have, conversations about certain things, religious articles and things like that. And Brent tries to give me the scripture because I don't know the Bible like Brent does. Brent knows the Bible front and back. And so he'll give me this is the scripture that says that it's okay to believe this way, because sometimes I'm just lost. So yeah, we definitely cover the Bible, and we're doing more work now to figure out how we can make that more of a part of our show, because it is such a rich conversation to be had.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, especially I'm thinking with both looking at it at the current climate and with that homeschool history, and that both of you having that kind of very rich, even not evangelical. Well, one of you is evangelical, but your history and looking at it now, I think that's just a brilliant way to talk about it.
Exactly, and especially seeing the seeds of how this all was sown. Because you would come to believe that abortion has always been illegal, that that all of these things that evangelicals believe in, it's just always been this way. So having a conversation about, no, this is a movement. It's a political movement that started. It has power. It's being funded. And so easily we can get rid of it, So having, being able to have that conversation of like, this is about politics. We can fix this,
Yeah, we strive here at Atheist Talk to try to stay away from, because we're a 501c3 tax deductible educational organization, so there's only certain things we can say or do, unlike churches, as far as endorsement of people and parties. But we talk about policy a lot, and it seems like right now I would love to like hit both sides equally on stuff. I never realized there's more than two parties, but I'd love to hit both parties equally. But right now, there's the biggest problems are coming from just one side.
Yes,
basically. Yeah.
I would say so.
And that's so frustrating.
Yeah. It is. It really is. And what's really very frustrating is it's just stunting our growth as a nation, which people don't get, because we keep having the same arguments while other nations are like, okay, we figured this out. We're moving on. We're trying to solve bigger and bigger and better things, because we have so many other bigger issues as a country that we need to be tackling. And we're still stuck on this sort of rat wheel, arguing the same battles over and over again.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
it's like,
go ahead.
Like the abortion thing, it's like that I thought was done. I always said that when I was a Christian. I was like, well, the courts decided, what whether or not it's legal. And it's like, but they weren't done. They just kept trying. They kept having at it, to repeal it and stuff.
Well, and they keep coming at it from different ways too. I mean, it's like this endless font of this, and it's like, could you please stop? and my favorite, one of my favorite parts is, and this is kind of more on the Democratic side, one of my favorite parts is people who say, oh, well, they're just as bad. I'm like, no, only one side is trying to decide whether or not people should exist.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And it's the same thing. I mean, it's the same thing too with race, and this is why we talk about race a lot. Like we just had the anniversary of Charlottesville, and there was a lot, we've had a lot of white supremacists on the radio and on the news in the past, couple weeks. And it's just so frustrating that, I have to, turn on the radio and I'm listening to a white nationalist rank people according to IQ tests. And here we are in 2018. Here I am, a Black person who's paying my taxes, who went to school, has a professional job, and I still have to turn on my radio and listen to someone debating my humanity based on IQ tests. So it's like we take 2 steps forward and then 15 steps back, and it just gets exhausting constantly fighting for your humanity, which is basically what we're doing for women's health, for humanity. It's absurd.
Yeah. On a more lighter topic, I've got about 2 minutes again before I have to go to break. And I did promise listeners that we were going to talk about farm animals.
I must have missed that post.
Oh, no, it wasn't. It was going into the break. I promised we were going to talk about farm animals. And,
right.
And we don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but I am a huge music lover. And when Brent talked about farm animals, can you share what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's the name of my solo album on the band Half Haggard. It's called Farm Animals, spelled with a PH, though. I don't know if anybody would get that, but I live in Florida, and a lot of Floridians would get it.
Is Florida spelled with a PH? I'm confused.
No.
We just had a lot of pills on the street.
Yeah, a lot of farms down here, a lot of pharmaceuticals.
So it's more like pharma animals.
There you go.
Not farm, not like fat farm animals. Like fat. No. Fat PH hurts you.
I know.
Okay.
I just had to
Stop pointing at me.
I was pointing at my belly.
So do you do your own music then to open the show?
I do. Yeah, I write all the music and I change it every couple episodes. I try to just keep it fresh, and I just love creating things. I can't help it. I just will continue to do that. Yeah.
Is there a specific genre that you like to write for the show? Do you kind of keep it within a particular hey, I don't want to get too far off of this because I want listeners as they're tuning in to know that they're listening to the right show? Or
Right, yeah, I do try to keep it light because for a bit there I did like a full out punk rock intro. It was like Unapologetix, and it felt too might scare people.
I'm down for that.
I was
Like,
gonna say, we should do that.
no, well, I mean, if we could, maybe we could get Brent to write it, but I'm not singing. That would scare people off. Julie's over there raising her hand. All right, well, we're going to go back to another break. We'll return to our discussion with Hertzie, Nikki, and Brentley right after this brief commercial break. This is Maddie Love, and you're listening to Atheist Talk on KTNF, AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Thank you for tuning in to Atheist Talk on AM 950 KTNF. I'm Maddie Love in studio this week with Hertzie Hertz and joined via Skype by Brantley and Nikki from the Unapologetix podcast. Before we continue with our conversation, we need to take a moment to thank our sponsors. All of us at Atheist Talk are asking for your help in keeping secular voices on the public airwaves and in podcast form. Atheist Talk is produced with funding from the Minnesota Atheists and Cucumbers Restaurant in Edina. Please consider visiting our sponsors, and if you do, let them know that you appreciate their support of Atheist Talk. If you would like to advertise on the program, please and keep us on the air, please contact us at radio@mnatheist.org. This radio program is put together by dedicated volunteers and the generous donations of people like you. It is because of listeners like you that we're able to keep Atheist Talk on the radio and in podcast form, and this week we'd like to thank monthly sustaining donors Cindy and August. Huge thanks to all of you who donate each and every episode over on Patreon. If you're able to help with a donation, you can do so over at our Radio Fund page or by becoming a patron. You can sign up for as little as $1 an episode over at patreon.com/atheisttalk and listen to all of our extended interviews, discussions with a healthy dose of tomfoolery where the FCC holds no sway. Minnesota Atheist is a 501c3 tax-deductible organization. When we say we couldn't do the show without you, we really do mean it, and we truly are grateful for all of your contributions. Music for Atheist Talk is by composer and member Brent Michael David. And with that mischief managed, we can get back to the conversation. That's a lot to read. I don't read it as fast as you do, Hertzie.
Well, I did speech for a little bit, and we did practicing on some of that, and apparently some of those skills stayed. Though I do have to laugh. I think we if without our wonderful donors, we'd probably still do it, but the station would kick us out.
That's true. That's true. We could do this show even if we weren't paying the bills.
Yeah, we don't get paid.
We'd just be talking to ourselves somewhere, over a cell phone.
Yes. So wouldn't you rather hear us?
Exactly. Don't you want to listen to this echo chamber? during right as we were talking about how yes, both parties, we're not endorsing either party, but only one party is currently infringing on our actual religious liberty, not their made up religious liberty. We got an email somebody "Oh, you stupid echo chamber, blah 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 blah." It's it's dude, you complain about the show frequently and you listen every single week.
Hi.
Keep listening. It's I was thinking it was those pastors that used to buy tons of albums and burn them or crush them with a steamroller. And it's you realize you bought the albums, right? We burned all these Harry Potter books. Oh, the Harry Potter books you bought? Way to send a message there.
And that are mass produced. I mean, you're never going to be able to buy them all.
Yeah, no. What are you doing? What are you affecting here? By helping them.
So, getting back to your podcast, because, I probably should talk more about your podcast, because it's a pretty good podcast. How did you how did you make that decision to start doing a podcast?
That was, Nikki she kept telling me, because I was man, I keep on listening to the same music over and over again, which is just punk rock from the 90s. I just kept on listening to that over and over. And I was man, music is just getting boring. I'm not even listening to it anymore. She's try a podcast, And I was okay, and I pushed play on the front screen, and nothing really grabbed me until I got to the God Awful movies. That really grabbed me because I knew all the movies. Because I was raised on all these Christian movies, you know? And so to hear these guys, at first I was like, oh, atheists are going to talk about it? Oh, man. But then I listened to it, and I loved it, you know, because we knew they were terrible movies, you know, when we were watching them, you know? So it was just really funny. And so that kind of bridged the gap, not only from me to podcasts, but also to atheism, you know?
Questioning.
Yeah, because then I went back and listened to a lot of other skeptic podcasts and was like, wow, and it really reached me, you know, because it brings their experiences and their knowledge right up to you personally, almost like you feel like you're in the room hanging out with these people, and they're just really fun people to hang out with, you know. And so, yeah, I loved it. I just fell in love, you know, right away.
And I think, too, another portion was that we realized that we were often getting into these very long, you know, conversations where we would sort of try to grapple with a lot of, you know, the indoctrination that you dealt with growing up and how it relates to what's happening today in the world. And we were like, you know, these would probably be interesting conversations to have, especially because we do come from such different backgrounds. It was sort of like a jumping off point to say, hey, we could probably put this, you know, take this and it might be a little entertaining. I don't know.
Yeah, let's give it a shot, you know, let's see what happens.
Exactly.
No, I love that. My wife and I, who's actually currently sitting in the studio right now, she's a Christian, and we have the same kind of conversation. Like, maybe not the same exact conversations you guys are having, but the same conversations where we can have these like really long, deep, respectful conversations that it's like, wow, you know, I didn't think about it that way, right? I didn't think about it this way, and sometimes we're like, man, I really wish we would have recorded that. Because like, that would have been awesome recorded.
Exactly. Yeah, we went through that a lot. We were like, let's just do it.
See, I just have my cats, so that would be a very boring conversation because it's Luna and I meowing at each other. and she's not consistent.
No, but she's just like, I believe in the cat food god. You are the cat food god. Hail Hertzie.
No. It is you will worship me with cat food. I know my place in my household.
That's your child.
Everything
is in perfect order. Never mind.
No, nothing's in... Oh, God, my place is a wreck right now.
No, I just thought it was a bad cat pun.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Have you guys reached out to, like, I don't know, the Scathing Atheist, the God Awful Movies crew, and, like, said, hey, you guys, you realize that, like, you're, like, sort of the... helped push us into doing a podcast, and if I understood you right, like they helped you move into atheism?
Yeah, oh yeah, totally. For sure. Yeah, I was kind of confused at that point. Like I knew that everything I believed was crumbling all around me, but I hadn't really fully accepted it yet. And I feel like that's the way it is for a lot of people that were raised Christian. And like as time goes on, you know, it just starts to fall apart. You know, it's like a bad metaphor. It just starts to fall apart when you start to pull at the threads a little bit.
Well, and I think those movies, you know, they were designed to help like strengthen believers' faith and stuff like that. But I think they're a perfect way if you're looking at them from the critical point of view, like God Awful Movies, of like helping people go, oh wait, the belief I had, that is pretty silly. Like, why do I believe that? It's like pretty inconsistent with reality and just being a good person and common sense. Like,
there's a like, so I'm coming kind of a little bit from the outside. I was raised Catholic, and Maddie has met my parents with crazy liberal parents, especially for Catholicism.
Yeah, they didn't make me feel guilty at all.
That's because you don't live with them or haven't lived with them. Mom is a master of that, and if she's listening, I am dead. But it's like, but I grew up never seeing any of these movies. I think the closest I got was some Veggie Tales.
We played a lot of Veggie Tales for our kids. I can sing the song for you if you need me to.
I still love silly songs with Larry, but
I still love my lips.
Oh yes, but going back to the movies, like the longer movies, one of the things I've noticed is there's this huge thing about be poor that is so creepy, and I don't even know if the GAM guys have noticed this, but there's this whole thing about being poor is better, and I'm like, that's a subtle. It's almost what's the word?
It's almost like a little bit of social engineering, but I don't think they meant to do it. But I feel like it's all ingrained because it's across a variety of the different film producers. Like, they're all making bad Christian movies or bad religious movies, because they're not all Christian movies. But whether they are intending to do it or not, I feel like that's definitely a subtext that I recall from my fundamentalist upbringing, that you could be rich and go to heaven. Like, that was a thing. But there's a Bible verse about how it's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get into heaven. Rich women they don't talk about. But, like
well, money is the root of all evil.
Right.
Say that.
So there is that undercurrent of poverty is somehow like, and I'm sure that the priests and the religious figures who are getting your tithes are just fine with making sure that you should be impoverished and reliant on me.
Exactly. Yeah, just give all your money here, and we promise we're going to do the right things with it.
Yeah, totally.
Oh yeah, it's just creepy to listen to, just hearing that over and over with these movies.
Mm-hmm. I never noticed that before. Yeah. I think that's brilliant. I'm now going to be going back. I don't think I'm going to go back and re-listen to shows, because I don't think I could listen to Voiceless again.
Oh, that was tough. That was difficult.
I think my favorite right now was The Life Zone.
I don't remember that one, and maybe that's a good thing.
That might be a good thing.
Yeah.
I always loved that. My favorite, I think, was the movie The Mark, because I remember watching that movie, and their take on it was hilarious, because it was just a funny movie.
And it was all about the epistle mark, right?
The mark of the and it's like an end times, but it of course they have like this whole side plot first. And then all of a sudden, everybody disappears, and you're in the middle of a end times thriller. You know what I mean?
And I'm sure, like, the side plots and everything, all were nicely wrapped up, and the scripting was wonderfully done, and the story made sense from start to finish.
No. Yeah, we definitely have the best writers. The best writers in the field.
Right. Well, they think the best the best book in the world is the Bible.
Yeah.
And that's it's not good, even as fiction goes. It's terrible. It's boring. And the stories don't make sense.
We're still trying to figure them out to this day.
Talking donkeys.
Talking donkeys and talking about the semen emissions from donkeys. And that's biblical, so I feel like I'm allowed to say that. I will have to look up the Bible verse. It's one of Deborah McTaggart that does Beyond the Trailer Park. That is her favorite Bible verse.
Really?
Yeah, so when she gets a John 3:16 Bible verse sent her way, she throws back. And like I said, I don't remember the Bible. I will look it up during the break to share with listeners, so you can all be just as disgusted as I am. But it's biblical, darn it! It is biblical.
Oh, that's crazy.
So how often does Unapologetix come out as a pod? Like, when do new releases get put out?
Well, we were trying to do once every 2 weeks. That didn't work. So now it's basically a monthly podcast at the moment, but we are starting to put a lot more effort into it. We're just trying to find the time. It's difficult, because we work full-time jobs. So
and opposite schedules.
Yeah, on opposite schedules. So we go a whole week without even seeing each other, really.
Yeah, I feel you.
It's hard, but we love it so much that when it happens, it is really great.
And we have, in addition to the segments where we talk about religious stuff and political articles, we also talk about a lot of nerd stuff too. So we trying to build that in, as well as having time to watch the stuff,
right?
So we can talk about the stuff.
Exactly.
Also takes more time. So but we try to always when we do show, we want to pack it with as much information and entertainment as possible. So about once every 3 weeks.
All right, I'm going to cut you off again, Nikki. I'm so sorry. We'll return with our discussion with Hertzie, Nikki, and Brantley right after this brief commercial break. You're listening to AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Thank you for tuning in to Atheist Talk on AM 950 KTNF. I am Maddie Love in studio this week with Hertzie Hertz, and joined via Skype by Brantley and Nikki from the Unapologetix podcast. Going into the break, we're having a very interesting conversation. It was kind of hard to get around. And I was wondering, Hertzie, if you could help spill some of the knowledge that you learned. And I'm trying to like think of like FCC friendly puns I can use, because usually when I'm punning on something like that, it is not FCC friendly.
We are talking about emissions.
we're talking about biblical
Emissions.
biblical ejaculations.
So we found the Bible verse over the break. It was a pretty quick Google search. Yay, Google! It's Ezekiel 23:20, and both Maddie and I have a translation. I will be doing the King James version. For she doted upon their palmors, whose flesh is as the flesh of, sorry, FCC, asses, and whose issue is like the issues of horses.
And the New International Version, which of course is the more scholarly and updated version that everybody should be reading, unless your name is Ken Ham, or actually nobody should be reading, it's Ezekiel 23:20. There she lusted after her lovers, whose genitals were like those of donkeys, and whose emission was like that of horses. And this is your God. This is like, do they teach that in Sunday school to the 6 and 7-year-olds?
Not mine.
I mean, or even like if you want to keep it age appropriate, like to the teenagers. Because I mean that's age appropriate. Like, you know, you can talk about, like, I would honestly, if I was still teaching Sunday school, I wouldn't talk about that to like 6 and 7-year-olds, because that would be kind of like what's more in line with, say, the Catholic Church, and abusing little kids, because you shouldn't do that to little kids. But if you're talking to teenagers, like, I feel like that's a story of the Bible you could talk about. I'm guessing it's not talked about.
No, not at all. They pretend it's not there.
Questions that they do not want to answer.
Because once you put those searches into Google, you're going to come up with a whole lot of stuff.
Listen, kids, don't use the internet. There's information out there.
It's evil.
All of your questions answered at Sunday school.
That's right. Yeah. And Alex Jones.
Wait, Alex Jones isn't political, so I can say this. Alex Jones is bad.
No, he's a political advisor.
That doesn't make him a political person.
So speaking of Alex Jones type people, you're in Florida, so you have to be surrounded by hundreds, if not thousands, of people eligible to have a news story about them that begins Florida man. And then somehow that story gets even more disturbing than just Florida man. Do you have like a favorite news story that you've covered so far? Because like your show, you do cover some news stories. Do you ever cover like local news stories?
We do, but we don't really focus on the sort of crazier aspects of Florida, because we're trying to sort of rebrand Florida.
Good luck.
One podcast at a time. We're trying to say there are good people that live here that do normal stuff, like just, you know, go to parks and the beach and just enjoy themselves.
It's just like 1 out of every 10.
Yeah. But we do cover some Florida stories, but it's been like, you know, our last podcast we covered the story that became sort of international news now, the Marquise McLaughlin shooting in Clearwater. But yeah, we haven't really covered any real
like crazy. I mean, we do have a lot of crazy local news. You're right. I mean, the ones I like to cover though are the ones like where alligators like get in people's houses and stuff. That's always fun.
That's because that's a very normal occurrence.
That's a Florida thing right there.
But that's an alligator. You know, I mean, if you say Florida alligator and people are like, yeah, it's an alligator.
Yeah, and it's Florida. We expect that.
Yeah, you say Florida man, I'm like, well, at least it's not Brent. Because I know that Brent wouldn't do something that stupid.
One of my favorite podcasts, and she's been a guest over here. It's a Sarah Talk podcast. It's Sarah Austin. She lives just south of Orlando, and I think you two are in like near the Clearwater area.
Yes.
Yeah. So she lives south of Orlando, and I don't know my Florida geography at all, so I have no idea where that is. But yeah, she does this ongoing every episode of her show. She has a Florida man segment.
Oh,
nice. Oh, that's smart.
We definitely have plenty of those stories. Oh, it's everywhere. And I think, too, in the last podcast, we sort of talked about that. It's because we just have so many people from so many different states who are just like, I'm done with this state. And so everyone flocks to Florida because I guess Hawaii is too far away. And we just have this confluence of the oddest people in one area.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It is.
Most people... Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, no, that's just what causes a lot of these crazy stories, It's just all these people from everywhere else,
Yeah, coming down here.
Coming here.
It's the immigrants.
I mean, 95 degrees at 8:30 p.m. last night.
Yeah.
It felt like 21.
Yeah, we were just listening to you guys' commercial segment getting so mad at the weather.
Exactly. We
like,
want to live in Minnesota.
Are you kidding? When it hits 65 here, I'm already complaining about the heat.
Oh, God.
I'm usually more 75, 80. That's when I'll start complaining.
Yeah, I like Minnesota winters. Like, I like Minnesota winters. I like it when it's nice and balmy. I don't have to wear a coat. It's just gorgeous outside in January. I would die in Florida.
The specific freezes we get are a little annoying, but
No.
Right. Yeah, I could see that.
It's still worth it.
Yeah, I would love it.
I was going to say, if you guys want to come up to Minnesota, you have people who will help.
Oh, totally. You two could have been in studio with us this week.
Yeah, that would have been awesome.
Yeah, because this 90 degrees at 10 p.m. really it's not good.
And it's not even a dry heat, is it?
No,
Tropical.
absolutely not. I mean, it's like you wake up, because sometimes, we'll go for like really early morning walks. So you walk out your door at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it already feels like noon.
Yeah.
It is the most demoralizing feeling in the world.
Yeah,
It's
so
like, I guess I'm
humid.
just going to be in the house for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
The rest of my life.
Exactly. We get 3 solid months of the ability to enjoy everything
Of
around
70
us.
degree weather. That's it.
3 solid months.
And then you're probably surrounded by tourists.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's awful. Oh my gosh, it's awful.
And just to show you the mentality of Florida too, we have what they call tourist season, and I always see this bumper sticker that says, "Why do they call it tourist season if you can't shoot them?" That's so Florida.
Well, in Florida, you can. I mean, to be fair, you just walk up to them, pick a fight, and then shoot them and say you're standing your ground. I mean,
That's it.
I read that story.
Oh,
It was a horrible story, but it's like,
Horrible.
that's one good reason to never visit, for me, to never visit a trans woman in conservative parts of Florida. Like, no, I'm good. I'm good up in here in Minnesota.
It's it's very tough.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can only do that if you're a white male.
Right.
That's true. Otherwise, it's not standing your ground, because then you're the one that's inciting the incident.
Exactly.
Because
Yes.
you're not even this in that state.
All right. Well, we are actually, unfortunately, out of time, but you two willing to stick around and do some extra Patreon-only stuff?
Yeah, sure.
Fantastic. So, listeners, if you're hearing that, subscribe to the Patreon show, and you'll get some free bonus or some paid bonus content. Thank you for tuning in to Atheist Talk. I'm proud to be on the air with Minnesota Atheists. I hope you enjoyed the show. This has been Atheist Talk on AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota. All opinions and ideas expressed on today's show were the opinions of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect or represent the opinions and ideas of Minnesota Atheists.